13 here. So caddies here. So for a few of our events, obviously caddies play a larger role than others. Some we restrict, but for those events that we do allow caddies, the caddy is someone who helps the player during the round, including in these ways: carrying, transporting, or handling clubs; a person who carries transports, such as by cart or trolley, or handles the player's clubs during play as the player's caddy, even if not named as a caddy by the player, except when done to move the player's clubs, bag, or cart out of the way as a courtesy, or such as getting a club that the player left behind. So, for example, if I pick up a lost club near the green and put it in my bag, I'm not that person's caddy just because that club is in my bag. And likewise, if someone's bag is in the way of a person hitting their shot, that person can move the bag to get it out of the way, or a spectator or one of us as a referee could do that as well, and there's no issue there. A caddy can also give advice. So a player's caddy is the only person other than the partner or the partner's caddy that a player may ask for advice without getting penalty. And then the caddy can also help the player in other ways that we'll talk about here in a little bit. The other thing that I skipped over at the top too, it's important, is that the player is responsible for what the caddy does out there. So for any action the caddy takes during the round, the player could get penalized for that. Player is only allowed to have one caddy at a time. However, the player cannot have more than one caddy, but can switch caddies, but must not do so for the sole purpose of getting advice from the new caddy. So, for example, if they have two people out there with them, and one is a swing coach or guru, and the other one is their normal caddy, if they start hitting it sideways, they can't switch their caddies just to get advice from that swing coach. In that case, there'd have to be some reason that they would switch. So an injury, or the caddy has to leave, or something like that. That's the typical reason that would come up. So, an example that happened, I think it was this past year at the U.S. Women's AM, they had the girl that ended up, or I shouldn't say girl, the lady that ended up winning. She had her coach caddying for her, but the coach had to leave to go to a funeral or something like that. So in the final match, the coach left her kid on like the 15th hole or 14th hole or whatever, and some player that missed the cut ended up stepping in.
We are still waiting for the new number to be pulled on the bushing, and I think on the
Sorry.
upper pad.
Mute these people. So the person that jumped in was just another person that was there, who missed match play or lost earlier, and she jumped in, and that player ended up making a winning putt on the 18th hole, I believe, if I remember correctly, and got help from that caddy. But obviously it wasn't on purpose that they made the switch. It just, there was a legit reason for that. And then any person that walks or rides along with the player who carries other things, such as a rain suit or an umbrella or food or drink, is not the player's caddy unless he or she is named as such by the player, or also carries, transports, or handles the player's club. So if we're at a junior event and mom is carrying the umbrella for the kid, not a problem. That's not caddying. That parent can do that. There's no rule against that, but the parents can't take over pushing the clubs or doing anything of like that with their actual clubs or equipment that's in their bag. So it is possible for a caddy to help more than one person at a time. So you'll see this a lot at a country club where you have someone doing a double loop, or maybe they're riding in the back of the cart and caddying for two people. That's definitely possible. But when that does happen, if there's a rules issue, involving a specific action of a shared caddy, it needs to be decided which action the player or what player is going to be involved. So if the caddy's action was taken at the specific direction of one of the players sharing the caddy, the action was taken for that player. If none of those players specifically directed that action, the action is treated as taken for the player sharing the caddy whose ball was involved. Okay, so in this used to be, more of an issue when we had carts and rules for balls hitting players' equipment. Now that that's not an issue, we have less of these scenarios that happen. But for example, if Tom was the player and I was caddying for both him and Jim, and Tom asked me to break this branch that was in his way. If I did that, Tom would get the penalty for that. And if they didn't tell me and I went ahead and broke the branch, whoever's ball was impacted would get penalized, one way or the other, if it was Jim or Tom's. And then, as you can see here, which we use for a lot of our events, there's a local rule that can be put in place to prohibit the use of caddies. So we do that for a lot of our events. We can also restrict the player's choice of caddy. So the USGA does that for the junior AM and the girls junior. So in that case, the caddies can't be, I think it's a legal guardian is the term they use, if I remember correctly, Mark, is that right? Yeah. So a lot of times you'll see at those events, you'll see brother or sister caddying or a grandparent, but can't be the mom or dad. And I'm sure as we deal with on a time by time basis, you all see it can get kind of personal out there when you have parents caddying for their kids. Luckily, we don't have too many of those issues during our amateur events.
I think it's personal if they're not caddy.
That's true. Yeah, you're right. It's personal both ways, but they feel more of a right to speak up when they're caddying, as opposed to when they're on the sidelines. But yeah, for our events, we don't limit the caddy or restrict the player's choice. But for those two USGA qualifiers that we run, or I guess 3, because we do 2 boys US junior amateurs, the caddy can only be someone that's not their legal guardian. And we do communicate that out ahead of times, but we always get that question for those qualifiers. All right, and if the player breaches Rule 10.3, then they're going to get the general penalty. So when they do switch to their swing coach to get advice, they'll get it for that hole on which they helped. And if it happened between the play at 2 holes, then they'll get the general penalty for the next hole. All right, some things that the caddies can do. They can transport, carry clubs. They can search for a player's ball. Okay, now they're protected under the new rules so that the player's not penalized for moving their ball while searching for it. They can give information and advice. They can take care of the course, smooth bunkers, fix ball repair marks, etc. But we still have those couple exceptions that we talked about under Rule 8.2 and 3. They can remove sand and loose soil on the putting green. I think they show in the rules class, they show a video of Rory McIlroy's, I don't know if it was him or his caddy, but of removing sand on the fringe. I thought that was his caddy, if I remember right, the video. But so as long as it's on the putting green, they can do that without getting penalized. They can remove or attend the flag stick. They can mark the spot of the player's ball, lift it and replace it. So that's actually, they always were able to mark it, but now they're actually able to replace it now. Whereas before it was only the player that could replace it. Now the person that marks the ball, or the caddy in this case can replace it as well.
Kyle,
Yes.
I have a quick question on that.
Yeah.
So my caddy marks my ball, throws me my ball, and then I replace the ball and putt. Am I okay to do that, or does the caddy have to replace the ball?
No, you're good to put it back there. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, and that's the same with anybody. If I ask one of my fellow competitors to mark my ball while I'm breaking a bunker, they mark my ball, throw me my ball, I can replace my ball. It doesn't have to be that, in that case, that fellow competitor.
Correct. Yeah. The player can always replace their ball.
The player can always do that, but the person that marks it does not have to replace it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then the other thing too now with caddies that was a change from or started in 2019 as well is that now caddies can do it without having to ask permission, whereas before in many cases the caddy had to ask permission to mark not only their player's ball but maybe other balls in the green, and that was because in other parts of the world it was tradition or part of common practice for caddies to run ahead, get to the green, mark all the balls, clean them, and put them back in the right spot before the players got there. So that's now allowed.
So this is only for the green though, right? They couldn't do it in the fairway.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Correct. Yes. So Robert, I guess your question would be if the golfer is marking their ball to lift it to identify it or something like that.
Yeah.
Let me, Jim.
It's the next sub point, sub 2.
Yeah, it's in 2.
It's in 2. Okay. So with the player's authorization.
Yeah, that's right, Kyle.
Yeah. So Robert, in that case, as long as you authorize the player to do the caddy to do that, it could apply for other places off the green as well.
Oh, okay.
But,
all right, thank you. I thought
yeah.
It was only on the green that he could replace the ball.
No, he can lift it and replace it off the green, but he needs prior authorization each time.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
But on the green, he doesn't need any kind of authorization.
Correct. Yeah, on the green, he can just do it now. Doesn't need to ask. Yep. All right, and then they can also clean the player's ball, and then obviously when the rules allow that, and then remove loose impediments and movable obstructions as well, provided that that's allowed by the rules. Actions that are only allowed with the player's authorization. We talked about when a player's ball is lying anywhere except in the putting green, lift the ball under a rule requiring it to be replaced, or after the players decided to take relief. So that just talks about lifting the ball, though. You can also restore conditions that were worsened after the player's ball came to rest. So if for example, we have sand that was hit on our ball that wasn't there when our ball was sitting there. Someone in a bunker deposited sand on our ball. Our caddy could help remove that sand. So when I read this, it says the player lift the ball. It doesn't say the player or the caddy can replace it though, does it?
So Kyle, it's in 14.2b.
Okay, right.
Any person who lifted the ball or caused it to move,
right.
Even if they weren't allowed to do so.
Right. Yep. Okay. Thanks, John. All right. And caddy actions that are not allowed is not allowed to concede the stroke in a match, or agree with the opponent on a match score. So, in our cases, the caddy can suggest to the player, but when we're doing a match and we hear, the caddy say it's good. And a lot of times maybe that will be a parent for a young kid playing in the amateur. We want to make sure to tell that parent and that player that, you're the one that needs to concede putts, not your dad. They can also, they can't stand on or close to an extension of the line of play behind the player's ball when the player begins to take their stance. They can't, here we go, replace a ball unless the caddy had lifted or moved the ball, or drop or place a ball in the relief area. Caddy cannot do that. They can also cannot decide to take relief under a rule, or the caddy can advise the player, but the caddy must not decide that. So I think there was a scenario that happened, was it 2 years ago on the web.com where, or I guess now the Corn Ferry, but there was a ball that went into the penalty area and the caddy went in, it was sitting on rock, and the caddy went in and grabbed the ball before the player went in. The player made the decision. And in that case, they ruled that it was a penalty for moving the ball, or not marking the ball, because it wasn't like for certain that the player was going to take relief, or that the caddy wasn't given direction from the player that they were taking relief and to go pick it up. So things to be aware of, and a lot of these things, we every event we do is not caddies, so we don't have to deal with this a ton, but definitely having caddies and carts involved in events can tend to make things more complicated sometimes with the rules. All right, player is responsible for his or her caddy actions during the round and while play is stopped under Rule 5.7, but not before or after the round. If the caddy's actions breaches a rule that would breach a rule, if the action was taken by the player gets the penalty under that rule. And then when application of rule depends on whether the player is aware of certain facts, the player's knowledge is treated as including whatever is known by his or her caddy. So apparently it's a good idea to have a dumb caddy, or the caddy that doesn't know the rules in some cases, and maybe one that does know the rules in others. All right. The other thing too with caddies, I think we may have touched on it prior. Well, maybe we didn't, but when there is actually no restriction on caddies going out on the course prior to play in the rules of golf. I think we talked about this during delay or suspension, but there is basically like an unwritten rule on the tours to prohibit caddies from going out there. So they can't penalize a player, but if the caddy were to go out, the morning of before and start looking at all the hole locations, take notes, roll balls, etc., there'd be no penalty under the rules of golf. But what the tours do is they will say that that caddy's done for the day or for the event or whatever they have. So if we do have that, if we have caddy go out there, again, not against the rules, but we're going to want to try to restrict that, especially on certain events where caddy that went off in the morning might have an advantage over one that goes off in the afternoon because they can't go back out in the course that night or whatever after play is past the hole to get information. So if we see that, no penalty under the rules, but we want to get caddies off the course either before or after the rounds. All right, any questions on 10 before we move on to 11?
Kyle, this is Bill.
Yeah.
Kyle, I think I've seen a couple of instances in pro tournaments where a caddy has gone out the night of before the next round. Is that not allowed? In other words, they've gone out and looked at, they checked their booklets about the contours, the greens, and so forth. Is that not allowed for them to do that?
There's nothing against in the rules prohibiting them to do that, but the tour, has their own ways of handling that. So what they'll do is they'll politely ask that caddy to, if it's the first time, they'll probably say, hey, you can't do that out here. They'll probably slap them on the wrist, but I'm sure if it's an ongoing thing, they'll probably kick the caddy out of the event.
Is it permissible during practice rounds for them to take notes and so forth?
Yeah, definitely. So I mean, that's when they do the majority of that.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. So rule 11 here, ball in motion accidentally hits a person, animal, or object. Deliberate actions to affect the ball in motion. So rule 11 covers what to do if the player's ball in motion hits a person, animal, equipment, or anything else in the course. When this happens accidentally, there's no penalty, and the player must accept the result, whether favorable or not, and play the ball from where it comes to rest. Rule 11 also restricts a player from deliberately taking actions to affect where any ball in motion might come to rest. And then this rule applies anytime a ball is in play, anytime a ball in play is in motion, whether after a stroke or otherwise, except when a ball has been dropped in a relief area and has not yet come to rest. That situation is covered by rule 14.3. Okay, so what happens if the other thing in this rule that's important is this concept of whether it's accidental or it's on purpose. So in this case, it's accidental. The ball in motion accidentally hits a person or an outside influence. There's no penalty to any player. Okay, and then that's also true even if the ball hits the player, the opponent, or any other player or their caddies or equipment. And we're going to generally play that ball from where it comes to rest. But there are a few exceptions of when we will not play that ball from where it comes to rest. And then there's also an exception here if the ball is on the putting green, and we have player's ball in motion hits another ball at rest on the putting green, and both balls were on the putting green before the stroke, the player gets the general penalty. So we don't necessarily want this to happen, but it seems to happen at least once a year where you have a player's two balls on the green and one ball hits another. In that case, the person who was playing is going to get the penalty, provided that it was their turn to play, aka they were farther away from the hole. Yeah, Jim.
Yeah, hopefully it was just unique to me. This rule was new last year, and for some reason, it just boggled my mind. Remember, I went so far as to retype it so I could copy and paste sections. And this year I look at it and it is ridiculously simple and easy. 11.1a, no penalty to any player if the ball hits something.
Right.
With but one exception. First part, no penalty. Doesn't matter. Nothing matters except on one occasion, and that's the one that's always been true, that in stroke play,
on the green,
the ball is in place. And the second part then is, first there's no penalty. The second part is play the ball as it lies, with but two exceptions.
Right.
A couple of which, of course, have more exceptions, but, it's really almost ridiculous. I'm embarrassed to have to admit how hard I worked to be stupid last year.
Well, I think one nice thing about when they rewrote the rules, especially with this one, is they've kind of combined all these scenarios of when the ball is in motion. As before, it was who was involved, who was it? There are all these different factors, and I think the way they rewrote it is definitely much more simple. So, and then we'll talk about an outside influence here. So, an outside influence, the definition is any of these people or things that can affect what happens to a player's ball. So it can be any person. So in stroke play, anyone that we're playing with, our playing competitor or fellow competitor under the old way, is now an outside influence. However, that's not including the player's caddy or their partner or their opponent. And that also includes any animal, and then also any natural or artificial object or anything else, including another ball in motion. Let's see here if we can call this up. I forget what this was. Oh, I know what this is. Should we watch it? It's happy going. Let's see if we can get it to call up and not cause a huge issue. It might have got taken down.
Shooter's ball is in the woods and Happy's on the tree. Earlier, a car driven by a crazed fan rammed the TV tower. Excuse me, I just got to get through. I'm looking for my ball. This is golf. Thank you. Thank you. The rules play it as it lies. That's two thus far, shooter. Oh, yeah, good for you. You can count on me waiting for you in the parking lot.
All right. All right. I try to make this somewhat fun and enjoyable from time to time. So obviously, if we have that situation in real life, the player does not need to play it as it lies. They will, we'll definitely get that ball in play right underneath that person's foot, or if it got caught in their bag or something like that, then we would just take it down to the ground immediately below where the ball was, and they would play. But we're almost always, I can't use the word always with the rules, but we're almost always going to play the ball as it lies or where it comes to rest, except in these two situations here. So that one that we just talked about, we're gonna move the ball, and we're gonna drop the ball in the relief area. So in this case, our relief area is defined by the point right under where the ball first came to rest. So in that example from Happy Gilmore, it'd be the point on the ground, right underneath his foot where the ball was. Reference point. Yeah, reference point is there. And then from that point, we get one club length. But it needs to be in the same area of the course as the reference point and must not be near the hole in the reference point. Okay, so this gives us a little bit more room in terms of where we.
Hello. Hi, I'm Gabe from cardiology. I tried to see you before.
Sorry about that.
And I'll kind of express that.
We're gonna unmute him. Gabe. All right. I'm just gonna mute everyone. For those of you you can unmute yourself now, but we'll just default unmute everyone here. Sorry about that. All right. Yep. All right, and then when the ball is on the putting green, though, we're gonna place the original ball or another ball in the estimated spot right under where the ball first came to rest. So if that guy's foot was on the green, we would place the ball right underneath it there. Okay, and then exception 2 is when a ball was played from the putting green accidentally hits any person, animal, or movable obstruction or on the putting green. So in this case, the stroke does not count, and the original ball or another ball must be replaced on its original spot, which, if not known, must be estimated. Okay, so the key here is that it's two requirements need to get met. It's both when the ball was played from the putting green, and this person, animal, or movable obstruction needs to be on the putting green as well. So if both of those aren't true, then we're not gonna. This exception doesn't kick in. But if let's say, for example, if I hit a putt and Mark just happens to go up and doesn't, for whatever reason, he thinks my ball's gonna go in the hole and he just whacks it out of the way. Well, in stroke play, we still need to hole out. So in that case, I'm gonna put the ball back where I putted from and putt again. And we'll deal with Mark on a separate scenario there for his bad actions, but that would be one example.
It depends on whether it was accidental or deliberate. Correct. Yes, you're right. So,
How do you do that by
so I guess that's not a good example for that. Then you're right. So if it's an accident, let's just say Mark happened to be walking by and all of a sudden he walked into my ball when it was rolling, then we would still put the ball back. But I think wouldn't you would always, in stroke play, wouldn't you always go back and replay it though, even if it was accidental or deliberate?
Kyle, you might want to wait to get to the deliberate section.
Right. Okay. Yeah, we'll wait on that. But so here we're talking accident, and let's see, and then, however, so the stroke does not count. Original ball or another ball must be replaced, except in these couple cases. If a ball in motion hits another ball at rest or a ball marker on the putting green, the stroke counts and the ball must be played as it lies. Okay, so if I have like that example that we were talking about before, where we're going to get that penalty for hitting a ball. If there's two balls in the green, the person that putts is going to get a penalty for hitting that other ball, but then in that case, that person is going to play out their ball as it lies and not replay their shot.
what about the other ball?
But the other ball in that scenario would move back to where it was. Yeah. So just like we talked about, like when a shot was coming from off the green, we would put that ball that was not in motion back where it was before, if we don't know the exact spot estimated. And then if a ball in motion accidentally hits the flag stick or a person intending the flag stick, this is covered by Rule 13, not by this rule. And we'll talk about, yeah, Jim.
Yeah. This is maybe the simple being made hard. Ball in motion, no penalty, with the one exception. It says play the ball as it lies, two exceptions. The first one is obvious. If it's on something, now the rule says you must take relief. Exception 2, if it's on the putting green, you cancel and stroke over. And then they bring you back to 2 exceptions, but the 2 exceptions are the same as the original. On both of those, you play it as it lies.
Correct, yes.
So it's really not that hard.
Right.
Sort of,
right?
So
Until
this would include power lines, this rule, basically, or is that separate?
So this one is separate of that. So power lines are
Something that's a local
typically
rule.
it's a model local rule that's put in that would mandate the shot being replayed. Yep.
Is that local, do you know if that local rule still exists?
It is.
Okay.
The power lines? Yeah.
Because
Mhm.
we have
Yep.
to use it
Still there.
at Twin
Yep.
Lakes, and a couple of places.
Right. Yep.
It would be awkward if the ball landed on a coiled snake.
No. It's on the putting green, you just go back and hit it again and avoid the snake.
Dummy. You don't pick up another ball.
No, you have the caddy pick up your ball.
Yeah.
You just gotta prove it.
Boy.
Jim's got it all figured out for the snakes.
Yes.
Terrible. But you have the same line of play, so you gotta move the snake.
You know, in the old days, they called
Caddy's
that
job.
a stymie.
Try and see
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Now we'll move to deliberate actions. Okay. So if a ball in motion is now deliberately deflected or stopped by a person, and this rule only applies when it's known or virtually certain that it was deliberate. Okay. So, you know, in the majority of cases, we're going to know when it's deliberate, but we also may need to determine when something was deliberate, even if the player doesn't necessarily admit it, because we know that there's players out there that will know how to answer questions properly. And so if they say, oh yeah, it was accidental, you know, that doesn't mean that we have to always go with that. If we can prove otherwise that something was deliberate, you know, by the standards that we talked about in known or virtual certainty, but looking at all those other things that we can consider, advice from or things from spectators, rules officials on site, other information that we're looking at, you know, we could possibly overturn a player saying, oh, it was accidental, but there does need to be known or virtual certainty that this action was deliberate in order for us to apply the penalties or the rules in this section here. All right, so a person deliberately touches the ball in motion. Okay, so we have like the whole Phil Mickelson incident here. The ball in motion hits any equipment or other object, except the ball marker or another ball at rest, or any person such as the player's caddy that the player deliberately positioned or left in a particular location so that the equipment, object, or the person might deflect or stop the ball. So the example that I always use is, you know, you can't leave your cart in a certain position, you know, on the other side of a bunker, just in case you scull it out of the bunker, to have that cart serve as a backstop. But if the cart just happens to be there and you did it accidentally, then there's no worries. But if you purposely put it there, then we have an issue. Okay, but we have an exception here. If the ball is deliberately deflected or stopped in match play, when there's no reasonable chance it can be holed, then there's no issue there. So an opponent's ball in motion that is deliberately deflected or stopped at a time when there's no reasonable chance it can be holed, and usually this is done when there's a concession being made. We're good in that case, and there's no penalty for that. For a player's right to have a ball or ball marker lifted before a stroke is made, we will talk about that in Rule 15.3. So that's not covered under this rule. All right. So when does the penalty apply? So the player gets the general penalty if they deliberately deflect or stop any ball in motion. It's true whether it's the player's own ball or a ball played by an opponent or by another player in stroke play. Okay. So Mark is at minimum getting a general penalty for him stopping my ball. However,
You still have to replace like you still have to putt again.
So
let's say I just,
let's So I think we'll get to that.
okay.
Yep. However, we have this exception here: if the ball is moving in water, there's no penalty if the player lifts his or her ball as moving in water or temporary water, or in a penalty area when taking relief. All right. So, to your question, Mark, place where a deliberately deflected or stopped ball must be played. If it is known or virtually certain that it was deliberately deflected or stopped, it must not be played as it lies, and instead the player must take relief. So a stroke from anywhere except the putting green, the player must take relief based on the estimated spot where the ball would have come to rest if not deflected or stopped. Okay, so this can be a little, I guess, could be challenging depending on the situation. But in this case, we're going to have the player is going to estimate that point, and we're going to have our same relief area that we have here. That estimated point, 1 club length from that point, no closer to the hole, must be in the same area of the course. So, probably, and this isn't a great example of the dropping scenario, but let's say, for example, that we have a person hits the ball towards out of bounds, and their parent, dives out or kicks their foot or whatever from stopping the ball going out of bounds. In that case, we need to determine where the ball would have come to rest. And then if we think it was going to go out of bounds, that player would play under stroke of distance. But let's just say that instead of out of bounds, it was going to go in the middle of a bush. Well, in that case, we or maybe like, right behind a tree or something like that. We would estimate that spot, and then the golfer would have 1 club length from that spot in which to drop it. In that scenario, I don't know. I've not had this happen to me. I don't know if anyone else in the room has had this happen where we had to estimate it because of a deliberate action. Usually we have accidental, and obviously if it hits a spectator or something accidentally, then it's just rub of the green under the old term. But
and ask to replay the shot because it hit something. No.
Right.
You get the lie of the ball after it struck whatever it was, but you
right.
get to replay the shot.
I don't know how we can solve it, but yeah, if it's a big round bush and it would have gone into the big round bush, don't you still need 2 reference points to avoid having to take stroking distance? You would need to know where that ball would be in the bush in order to take the line to the, or 2 club lengths.
Right.
If it's a 3 club length bush, you don't know whether you gotten out or not.
Yeah, I think that's a good. It kind of gets back to that question we've been having in terms of. Yeah, I mean, if you the cacti or cactuses or cactus. But yeah, I think in this case, so you would. That's a good question. I don't know if by estimating a spot somewhere in that bush, if that would allow you to take the unplayable options beyond going back to where you last played from.
You call the rover and the official in charge.
Yeah, I think that's another yeah, exactly. That's another extension of this ongoing question we've had. But yeah, so I mean, typically, you would estimate that point, and then from there, you would have that 1 club length, and then move on. But like I said, I don't think that this will come up a lot in our events, but now that exactly. But now that I say that, it'll probably happen this year. Yeah.
Church has been texting me. He's having trouble getting on. So he's on now, but he can't hear you. Is there anything else to do?
User error.
Can you guys hear us?
No.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes. No and yes. Uh-oh.
How did the person answer?
I can hear you okay.
Okay.
Kyle,
I could not hear you.
Could not?
Kyle, can you hear me?
No.
Kyle, this is Phil.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all set.
Okay.
Speak loudly, Jerry Manor.
Yeah.
Kyle, this is Clarence. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Thanks.
Okay.
See if he's on the.
So we still don't have church.
Well, he said he got on. Tell him these aren't flip full compatible. But he said he can't hear.
All right, so certain people said they couldn't hear. Let me just.
We can't hear the discussion. We can hear you.
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. Gotcha.
Yeah, we can hear you. So maybe if a
Gotcha.
point is made in the discussion, maybe you could just repeat
Sure.
it.
Sure. Yep. Yep.
Right.
Sorry. No. Okay. I understand now. Okay. So yeah. So we were just discussing a scenario where we have a ball that was deliberately deflected from going towards a bush, but we don't know exactly where in the bush it was. But we're still going to estimate the point. But then the question came up, well, let's say that it's a big bush. If once we find our point and where we find that ball is to be, does the player have the option to take an unplayable when we technically don't know the exact spot there? And it kind of goes back to that question we've been having for a while is, well, do we really have that exact spot where we can take all three of our options under the unplayable?
Kyle, I think the rule requires you to pick a spot.
Right. Mm-hmm.
You got to pick a spot, okay? And if the player doesn't like it, you can call the rover, but in the end, you're going to pick a spot.
Right. Yep. So there was another question too. Can you, and this I think was going back to a previous one, can you demand an opponent to mark their ball on the green? And the answer to that is yes. That's not covered in this rule, but yeah, you can definitely ask a player to mark their ball if it's going to be interfering with your play. Common scenario, you might be putting from 40 feet away, and you have someone that's 6 feet away, and they just for whatever reason aren't marking their ball, but you want that sense of comfort that you're not going to get a penalty. So yes, you can ask the player to mark that ball even if they haven't done it. And then if the player refuses to, then we have a different scenario. But
Kyle, in stroke play, does the player have the option to go ahead and play rather than mark to hit their ball?
Yeah. Yes. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah, you could definitely do that, and that happens quite a bit in stroke play. You could definitely do that.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
Let's go back to the Phil situation where he stopped his ball on the putting green.
Mm-hmm.
But so the rule said you're going to estimate where it would have ended up. What if it didn't end up on the green? It was going then downhill and not into a bush, but just down into the general area. So on the green.
I thought that ruling was he made a stroke at a moving ball.
Right.
Yeah, he hit
from the putting green.
Yeah, he hit a moving ball on a putting green because it would have gone way past the green into probably the fairway or the rough. That's why he hit the ball.
Which doesn't really matter, but the stroke was made from the putting green.
Right.
Yes.
But they didn't penalize him under this rule. They penalized him under playing a moving ball.
Playing a moving ball. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. So and then Dan too. We'll get to this I think in a slide or two. But so in this scenario where we're estimating, this is a stroke that's not on the green. So if the stroke was made from the green, then we'd have we'd have a replay, or the stroke doesn't count. So a little bit different.
Okay.
Back to Rule 19, I think that when this rule requires you to select a reference point, the big bush, that's what you're doing, and that's the point. So now you've got the reference point that
Where the ball was.
Require for an
Right.
unplayable ball.
Yep. Yeah. So we just had some discussion here about the bush, and I think we were echoing what John said, that that when we are estimating this point in the middle of the bush, that's our point, and we'd have our options for an unplayable, all of our options there. All right. So what happens when the ball would have come to rest on the putting green? In this case here, we're going to estimate where the ball would have come, and we're going to place the ball on the putting green. We won't be dropping the ball in this case. And then when the ball would have come to rest out of bounds, so in our example of the crazy parent that stops their kid's ball from going out of bounds, then the player is going to play under stroke and distance there. All right, so if the stroke was made from the putting green, though, like we just said, the stroke doesn't count, and the original ball must be replaced on its original spot. All right. 11.3. Deliberately moving objects or altering conditions to affect the ball in motion. So when a ball is in motion, the player must not deliberately take any of these actions to affect where the ball might come to rest. Alter physical conditions. So by taking those actions listed in Rule 8.1, such as replacing a divot or pressing down that raised turf. So that video that we've all seen of Camilo Villegas and his ball rolling back to him, this is the rule that would apply here, or that he was going to get penalized for. We cannot lift or move a loose impediment or removal obstruction while our ball is in motion. However, we have an exception here to the flag stick. We're allowed to do that. We're allowed to lift or move a removed flag stick, a ball at rest in the putting green, or any other player's equipment other than the ball at rest, anywhere except the putting green or a ball marker anywhere in the course. So if someone sculls the ball out of the bunker and it's going towards, my clubs or whatever, I can move my clubs out of the way so it doesn't hit it. That's not a penalty. However, if there was I'm trying to think of something that would be a movable obstruction, or if there was a loose impediment, if there was a branch that was there, I can't remove that branch out of the way. But if it's my equipment or a flag stick, I can do that. All right, and then we're going to have the general penalty for doing that if we do remove any of those items or alter physical conditions. All right. Last thing about 11 that I just wanted to cover too. There's an interpretation that I want to go look at from the USGA about insects, and I believe it's look it up here. Yeah.
Kyle?
Yes.
While you're doing that, I just wanted to throw in that one of the questions on USGA practice test around that picking up a twig.
Yes.
Is out there. So it talks about even though the ball comes up short of the hole and the twig's in the background, where player A is putting and player B picks up a twig while the ball's in motion, player B does get penalized.
If he thought it might get to the twig.
If they're so Mark, the comment here was only if he thought the ball might get to the twig, or
right. If B deliberately removed the twig to affect where A's ball came to rest,
right,
B would get a 2-stroke penalty was the answer.
Right. Yep. Yeah. So if that twig, if there was zero chance of the ball getting there, and they remove that twig, no problem. But if there was any chance that it might have impacted where it came to rest, then yeah, you're right. We're gonna have that penalty.
Well, even if it came up short, because it's in motion, but if B deliberately removed the twig to affect where A's ball came to rest, then by the deliberate action it would still get the two-stroke penalty.
Sure. Yeah.
Because you didn't know where it was going to stop during motion.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense to me. If it was deliberate, if they're doing it purposely. All right, where am I here? Where are these interpretations or clarifications?
So, he's got all just clarifications there.
Living insects or animals.
Okay, so it talks about here this. It just defines as living insects or animals, and then that goes back to this whole thing. If our ball is and this is more. It happens more on the putting green, but if the ball if our ball is on the putting green and it hits an insect, then by rule the stroke does not count, and we need to replay that shot. So, yeah, that's something that I think probably happens, and most players probably just think that, oh, I just play it from where it comes to rest and don't, yeah. But it does say living insects too, so we need to make sure that the worm didn't get, yeah, exactly, yeah, right.
Patrick Reed would say he missed the putt because a fly stopped his ball and it flew away before anybody could see what had happened.
Yeah, so I think this is this is something that will definitely come up. So we need to be aware that if an insect does hit a ball while it's moving, the player is actually required to cancel the stroke and then play it again.
It doesn't matter whether the ball hits the insect or the insect hits the ball. Right.
So the question was here: does it matter if the ball hits the insect or if the insect hits the ball? So yeah, in either case, it doesn't matter. I think we're probably talking about the same thing, but yeah. So, all right. All right. Any other questions about Rule 11?
I'll wait till the end. I don't want to get bogged down.
Did we answer your question, Mark, about?
No, I have another one, but
Okay.
I'll just wait till the end.
Okay.
Kyle,
Yes.
this is Phil. Once again, the operative word on that last one was living. So if you hit a dead carcass or a dead beetle, you just play it as it lies.
Correct. Yes.
But if it's a live beetle, you replay it.
Correct. Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
What kind of proof?
Don't step on the beetle till after you replay it.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation, and we don't want to get into a match of
Dead or alive.
dead or live. We don't want to really get to that point, but
Hey, Kyle,
yes.
what if you start off with a bug on your ball and putt it? Any problem?
That's a good question. I don't know. I would say that it's I don't know.
Because I've done that before. Just putted it.
Right.
Wait for it to fly off.
I mean the rule does say hit, so I don't know if it was on there before. I don't know if you would say that hit it because it was already on it before.
I would agree.
So that would be my answer, but I can't say for certain that that's correct.
Okay. Thanks.
Yep. Okay. So rule 12 bunkers here. So the rule 12 is a specific rule for bunkers, which are specifically prepared areas intended to test the player's ability to play from the sand. To make sure the player confronts this challenge, there are some restrictions on touching the sand before the stroke is made and on where relief may be taken for a ball in a bunker. Okay, so this is a great picture here from the book. One of the nice changes they made is including pictures and colored in the rules book. But this kind of tells us about where a ball is in the bunker and when it's not in the bunker. And you can see those areas with X are now not in the bunker. That one in the bottom right here where the little island, that's always been the case, but that's stacked wall or earthen lip or face of the bunker is now not part of the bunker. And the reason that that's important is that will impact, you know, if a ball is embedded or not, and whether a golfer gets relief. And we already saw that come into play. Well, it was a little different scenario because it was a grassy lip, but at the tournament, I think a year ago with JB Holmes. But now we have a scenario with our bunker here where a ball could be embedded in that earthen lip of the bunker, not covered in sand. And the player now can take an unplayable and get out of the confines of the bunker or the quote unquote edge of the bunker if it's within our one club length, right, Tom? Yep.
In the bottom right hand corner, the ball's lying on the obstruction.
Correct. Yeah. So the bottom right corner is we have the ball sitting on top of the rake there, and then I mean I'm sure you know, but in this case too, that's a good one. So if that case, we would, you know, ask the player to mark the ball or mark the location of the ball. Usually put a T near that ball, and then they would, you know, remove the rake, and then we'll put the ball right underneath it there. Yep.
So that only works if the rake is actually in the bunker, not like overhanging.
Well, it'd be kind of the same thing if it's overhanging a little bit. I guess if
the rake is not in the bunker, but like you're on this part of it, and that part is overhanging the bunker.
Outside the bunker?
No, that part is.
Oh, you're saying the tines are half in and half out of the bunker?
Yeah.
And it's lying on the tines?
Yeah, something like that.
It would depend, I guess, if it's lying on the tines on the portion of the rake that's overhanging the bunker, it would still be classified as being in the bunker, I believe.
Right. Correct. Yeah. So in that case,
the ball has to go below the point that it lies if it's on that obstruction.
Correct. Yes.
So if instead of the rake, it was an empty potato chip bag, under the rules now, you can lift the ball up, take the bag away, and your reference point is there, so now you've got one club length to drop. Is that right?
True.
That's that is true now.
So when you're taking the leap, it has to be in the same area of the course, does it not?
Oh, yeah. No, you still have to
be in the bunker.
You have to take relief within the bunker.
I just want to make sure that that's John. You said that's true, correct?
What I think is that it has to be in the same area. I'm looking up the.
Oh, no, it has to be in the same area.
Right.
Yeah, because if you go to Rule 16, it's 16.1. There's B is relief in the general area. C is relief in the bunker.
Yeah.
So it depends upon the area of the course.
Right. Okay.
Kyle, isn't the only time that you can drop in a different area of the course is if you're taking a unplayable and can move, say, from the general area to the penalty area? I'm not aware of any other instance in the rules that you can drop in a different area of the course than from where you started.
So Jen, say your example again.
So the only rule that I'm aware of where you can drop in a different area of the course from where your ball started is if you're taking an unplayable lie, you could actually drop from the general area, say, into a penalty area when you're taking unplayable, but I'm not aware of any other rule and was asking if anybody else is aware of any other rule where you
penalty area.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, penalty. But there you're taking a penalty stroke, or you're taking a penalty stroke.
Yeah. So you're saying anywhere that you get free relief?
Yeah, I guess.
That would, yes. Yeah. Free relief has to be in the same area of the course.
Yep.
Right. Yeah, because I mean that one example that John brought up is the one that I was thinking of too, where you have a penalty area and then you've got a little, or the bunker that runs parallel to the penalty area, and if your 2 club lengths was within that, you could definitely drop inside the bunker there. But that's a penalty scenario.
Penalty or unplayable.
Right.
Still the unplayable.
Well, unplayable is a penalty scenario.
Yeah, exactly. So I think to Jim's point, if you're taking free relief, you always have to stay in the same part of the course.
Right.
If you're taking penalty relief, then you can go from insert. I'm not going to say always, but there's more flexibility from going to one part of the course to the other.
Okay.
It's ambiguous. You go back to the progression of penalty area, bunker, green.
If you're not sure which part of the course it is, then you go back to what we in Rule 2 or whatever we talked about that. Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess going back to the comment about the rake here. So if that ball there is on that rake there, then we're going to get that point right below, and that's the reference point, and then 1 club length in any direction, not close to the hole, but it needs to stay. In this case here, we need to stay inside the edge of the bunker. So even though our 1 club length might get us back out of the bunker, we're not allowed to drop it there. Yep. So I misspoke earlier and said that we would just put it right underneath, but that's not true. We have the one that's the reference point is right underneath, but now we can drop. Yep. All right. So I think that picture did a good job of it. Mark, to your question about if it's kind of overhanging or whatever. We also have the scenario too, where if it's on ground, where sand normally would be. So a lot of times you'll see washed out areas of bunkers that are dirt. If it is in the confines of the bunker and the way that it was designed, then that's still part of the bunker. Now, if it's inside the edge of the bunker, and we have that example of the island there, but it's on grass or soil, then that ball is not in the bunker.
It's the long grass that overhangs the bunker, and the ball lies there on the grass.
Right.
It doesn't fall into the bunker. Above it.
And right.
Purpose of the thing is to test your ability to play on sand. In fact, if you read, the paragraph that begins, if a ball lies, if we had one of those like low broadleaf weeds that you get in your lawn, if that was in the bunker and your ball was on that, it would not count as being in the bunker. Under the if paragraph. see what I'm saying?
No, say that again.
On soil or grass or other growing or attached natural objects inside the edge without touching any sand. The ball's, I don't know what the weed's called, but it's got broad leaves and it lies down on the ground and you get it from the lawn. Whatever it is, if one of those
crabgrass, probably.
And the ball was on top of that, it wouldn't count as being in the bunker.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Yep. Yep.
We had that lengthy discussion here in Indiana as well about ball sitting up on top of a single piece of crabgrass but not touching sand. It's not considered to be in the bunker.
Right.
That's got to be what that paragraph.
Right.
You have to be careful about grounding your club ball move.
Yeah, you'd want to be careful that if you did ground your club, not causing the ball to move that'd be definitely. Yep.
Say that again about grounding your club.
Oh, we were just saying that, in that scenario, if it was on a single patch of crabgrass, you just want to be careful about grounding your club because it might cause the ball to roll back in the bunker or whatever.
Well, you get put it back on the weed, but
you'd get a penalty, right? Yeah, if you did cause it to move.
But you can ground your club.
Correct. Yes, definitely. Mark, your question, I'm looking at the definition of a bunker and I don't see, it doesn't talk about the, how before it was more clear with the boundaries. It doesn't say, overhanging or.
This is the bunker.
Kyle, I think to me it's clear. The ball either has to be touching the sand or it has to be laying on something that's touching the sand.
Okay, so wait, Mark, can you okay, so show me again.
So basically this is all the bunker.
Yeah.
The rake is like this. The rake is technically not in the bunker, but the ball, this is never gonna happen, but the ball lands right there and is overhanging
the bunker.
The bunker.
Gotcha.
But it's
above.
It's above.
Yeah. So in that case, it'd be in the bunker.
It's not in the bunker because the margin only goes down and the bunker doesn't go up.
No, it'd still be in the bunker because it'd be just like that picture, where it'd be just like the picture and there'd be a diagram.
Technically not in the bunker at all.
Yeah, because in your case, you have the rake. It's like let's just call the rake a bridge. It's a bridge over the bunker, right over the corner or the edge of the bunker. But where the ball is on that bridge, right below it is the bunker. So yeah, so that would be in the bunker in that case. Yep.
Wouldn't you have to determine the point that the ball lies on that rake? If the rake is overhanging the bunker, and the ball lies partially on the general area and partially in the bunker.
And you're right. It does say that it needs to touch the sand.
And that's why they're making that exception for the thing like the rake, because it's not touching the sand, yet it is inside the border.
Right.
Yeah.
But
it says that the movable obstruction.
It's not inside the border of the bunker. It's above it.
Yeah.
The border of the bunker stops there at the land. It doesn't go up.
Yeah, I think actually
this may happen once.
Yeah, this doesn't happen that a lot, but I think the key is on 12.1. It says that if it's in or on a loose impediment, movable obstruction, abnormal course condition, or illegal object that touches sand. So if it's not touching the sand, then it would not be in the bunker.
Then where do you put it? Your reference point in the bunker?
This is never gonna happen.
I don't. Yeah. Tony, I'm not sure where that would be. It'd have to.
Seems like it could be, but then you'd be dropping the ball in an area of the course that was different than the relief or reference point.
Yeah. So I think if we can kind of equate this to the ball that's stuck in the in the lip as well. It is that if our one club length isn't going to get us to another part of the course, then our only option would be to take an unplayable at that point. So just like in that ball that's stuck in the lip, get back to this picture here. If our one club length, because that's the general area, if our one club length doesn't get us outside the edge of the bunker or whatever you want to call it, or we can't play it or we can't drop, in that stacked turf area, then our only option would be to take an unplayable. Well, that's an option under unplayable, right? Yep. So, yep.
All those who come down out of the sky, you can still take stroke distance.
All right. So when we're playing a ball in the bunker, this applies for during a round and while play is stopped. Removing loose impediments and movable obstructions. So now we know that we can remove these. Again, big caveat that we're not, causing our ball to move when we do that. However, we do have a penalty if we're touching the sand, if we're deliberately touching the sand to test the condition of the sand or to learn information for the next stroke. So if we, put our club in the bunker to figure out if the sand is soft or hard, then that is giving us information. We're testing the condition of the sand. So we would be penalized for that, but we wouldn't be penalized for just putting our club down, in the bunker, just standing in the middle of the bunker and we happen to let our club fall and it hits the sand, no penalty there. But if we're purposely trying to figure out if it's hard or soft sand, then we have an issue.
Does it matter if it's a bad camera angle?
For certain people, I think it does. So, however, that we still have our exception about grounding our club right behind where the ball or right in front of the ball. So we still cannot do that, and we also cannot make practice swings, or we cannot hit the sand on our backswing before making a stroke as well. Yeah, Jim.
And under the first one, now this is the kind of thing they put into question that you go, the rake is in the bunker next to your ball, so you take your sand iron and you pick the rake up with it, and you touch the sand in doing so. Is there a penalty? Well, apparently not. Because of the exception.
Yeah, so that, no, right.
Removing a loose impediment, that's a reason. It says you can use a club.
Yeah, that's, yep, that's new. So yeah, so if you were, just to repeat, so if you were, scooping your wedge to pick up the rake and you hit it, right, and you hit the sand with your club while doing that, that's fine, no penalty. Right. I mean, right. And that's always, we're always going to have this question, the sand. Well, were you actually, and we always get this question, was I testing the conditions? And there's certain things that you have to do. Like you have to take your stance in the bunker. So yeah, when every good player, when they go into a bunker and they walk, they get a feeling of how soft the sand is, and if you don't think about that when you're walking in there, then you probably should. But
like caring for the course. I mean, if the bunker is 60 foot long and your ball is in the forward edge of the bunker, and you decide to walk in on the back end of the bunker and take the rake with you as you go, and carry the rake behind you to take care of your footprints that are behind the ball.
Yeah. So yeah,
it's caring for the course, but at the same time, it is somewhat testing the condition.
Another place for an open-ended question.
Yeah, right. So yeah, that that scenario there, like you said, where your ball is in one part of the bunker and you rake, your footprints as you get to that part. Yeah, I mean that if you're doing it for the care of a course, that's your get out of jail free card. But you also, like Jim said, you might need to question the player or ask the question a little bit more open-ended. Yeah, no, don't say that. Yeah, why'd you drag that rake there?
You jerk.
But yeah, you're always going to have that concern about whether you're testing the condition, and ultimately it comes down to in a lot of cases what the player's intent was.
Well, that's kind of like stepping in and out of the bunker 3 or 4 times to it's almost like you're building a stance. Get my feet in position to hit the shot. It's okay to do it, but what are you really doing? What's your intent?
Right. Yeah. If you had that scenario, stepping in and out of the bunker multiple times, are they? Yeah. And I mean, you could make the same comment we talked about at the beginning, with Patrick Reed grounding his club, 6 times at a spot, like kind of odd. I mean, yeah, maybe he was just doing it, but it's also, was he pushing grass down to make a shot easier? Who knows?
He walked away from the ball and then he came back and he grounded it.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I think there's a certain extent that's okay, right? I mean, I think a lot of people will do that. They'll ground their club to see, what kind of contact they can get, and then they'll go up and figure out where they want to land it based on that contact. But when you start doing it 6 times, that's where you have the issue, and you probably want to start questioning the player.
Part of that is just costs.
Yeah.
You get your ticket yanked, you want your 15 minutes.
Right.
Hey, Kyle, on
Yeah.
the previous screen,
Yeah.
in making a practice swing, you can do that if you have an adjacent bunker.
Correct. Yes. Yeah. So Mark's comment was that if you're in a different bunker,
Yes.
not the same one, you can go in and take a practice swing. I typically don't tell people this because for pace of play, but also because it just creates a lot of confusion. So anytime I go to a club and do a rule seminar, I will never say that. But if the question often comes up, and I'll say that yes, that's okay, but I don't publicize that. Yeah. But yeah, you're correct, Mark. That would be okay.
Just to tell them that also counts in your 40 seconds.
Yeah. All right. And like we talked about before, there are certain things that we're going to have to do. I mean, we have to touch the sand when we go in, and our stance is in the bunker. We have to touch the sand, so we're not going to get a penalty for that. Like Tom was saying about smoothing the bunker for the care of the course, in that scenario where he walks or is raking behind him as he's walking up to his ball in the bunker, that would be okay. We can also place clubs or equipment or other objects in the bunker. So if and this hasn't changed. So if a player wanted to take their push cart right up into the bunker and leave it there, that's perfectly fine. There's no penalty for that. And if we are doing anything required by the rules, measuring, marking, things like that, no penalty. If we're leaning on the club to rest, which is new, that's no longer a penalty. And we could always do it to prevent a fall, but if we're doing it to rest or stay balanced, no longer a penalty for that. And then also, if we pull our Sergio imitation and strike the sand in frustration, there's no penalty for that.
So after the ball's been struck, it's still in the bunker.
That's whether the ball is in there or not in there. Yep, you could. If you're playing on a Sunday afternoon in the fall and you're pissed off that the Lions lost again, and you just hit the sand, and even when your ball is in there, it'd be okay. So.
Yeah, you take a stroke at it and miss it, and you're mad. You just stand back and wipe the sand 4 or 5 times. This gives you the right to do that.
You're right. Yeah.
Even though your ball's still in the same spot.
Yeah, and then this is another one that I don't publicize as well, because prefer that that people don't do that, or we throw in the caveat that they can get penalized under etiquette restrictions for doing things like that, which happened to Sergio, right, when he did all that stuff, I think in Saudi Arabia last year or whatever. He He got DQ'd. It was greens. It was bunkers too.
He did it the one bunker, but
Yeah.
like every green, he
It was the greens. Yeah.
scuffed up with
Right.
his shoes.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So they ended up DQing him for all that. But so there are ways to get around it.
Yeah.
However, the player, except for Patrick Reed, gets the general penalty if his or her actions in touching the sand improve the conditions affecting the stroke in breach of Rule 8.1, 8.12, or 8.3. All right. There are no restrictions after the ball is played out of the bunker. Okay, so person can take practice swings, ground their club. Once that ball is out of there, there are no restrictions. They can rake the bunker once the ball is out, and that's true even if the ball comes to rest outside the bunker, and then the player is either required by rule to come back to that spot, or if the sand in the bunker is on the player's line for the next stroke outside the bunker. Okay, but if the player's if the ball played from the bunker comes back into the bunker, where the player takes relief by dropping the ball in the bunker, the player cannot do that stuff now. So, if they were smart, they would rake the area before they drop the ball in those scenarios there. So if I hit the ball, if I scull it out of bounds, what I'd want to do is to rake that area and then drop my ball from where I last played, or from within one club length of where I last played. Not drop my ball, because once I drop it, I'm not able to rake it. All right. 12.3 specific rules for relief for a ball in a bunker. Okay, so we have a situation where we have interference by an abnormal course condition, interference by a dangerous animal condition, unplayable, and basically we'll get to all these a little bit later, but all of these are will kind of override what we just talked about, because they're more specific situations of taking relief for a ball in the bunker, and that allow us to do certain things. And some of those, as we know, like for example, the unplayable ball, that's gonna give us a penalty. And then the other scenarios in most instances will allow us to get free relief, and in a few instances will also come with a penalty. But usually those top two, we're talking about free relief for the most part. All right, any questions about bunkers before we move on to the putting green?
Thanks.
All right, Office Mark says go next.
Office.
All right. Putting greens. So Rule 13 is a specific rule for putting greens. Putting greens are specifically prepared for playing the ball on the ground, and there is a flag stick for the hole on each green. So certain rules apply here than for other areas of the course. All right, actions allowed or required. The purpose statement here for Rule 13.1, this rule allows the player to do things in the putting green that are normally not allowed off the putting green, such as being allowed to mark, lift, clean, and replace a ball, and to repair damage and remove sand and loose soil on the putting green. There's also no penalty for accidentally causing a ball or ball marker to move on the putting green. So that was a local rule since 2016, but now is incorporated in the actual rules of golf starting at the last year. The ball is touching the putting green when any part of it touches the green, or the ball lies on or in anything and is inside the edge of the putting green. So in this case here, Mark, we have a little bit more defined example of the edge here that we can
So if it's on the
talk
fringe,
about. It
the ball's
doesn't
overhanging it, but not touching.
right. Yep. So in your bridge example here, the ball would be on the green.
Okay.
Yep. Can that the ball isn't both on the putting green and another area of the course? We're going to refer to 2.2, and I believe that in this case, if the ball is going to be on the putting green, correct?
No, that's the last one.
Is it the last one?
Last one, yeah.
Okay. So sorry. So it would not be on the putting green if it was touching multiple places, except for the general area, right?
No.
Yes.
General area is.
If the ball is
General area is the winner. And after that, it's the sequence of penalty area, bunker, green, whichever comes first.
but no, I don't think that's true. If the ball is touching the green, it's on the green.
Oh, no,
Right.
it's touching the green, it's on the green.
So yeah, so I think that it's always going to be on the green, right?
Unless it's touching a penalty area or a bunker and the green.
Yeah. Right. Okay. Right. Which is, I mean, I guess it could happen.
Hard to imagine.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Okay. And we commonly get this question too, you know, and I think we talked about this before in Rule 2, but you know, and if there's ever a doubt to the edge of the green, you know, we're gonna be a little more lenient on that, especially in the earlier months of the year where the greens lines might not be clearly defined because of bad weather or whatever. Or certain maintenance practices haven't been started yet for the year, so you know we're going to be a little bit more generous there.
So it's true that.
So, Kyle,
Yes.
you know, this is where these rules really don't make any sense. If you look at the structure of the putting green, and you know that there's a fringe around the putting surface, how is it possible that a little ball like that could be on both the green and a penalty area or a bunker? I mean, it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I think yeah. I mean, it's very rare to happen. I mean, I think the only example I could think is if you really had a green that bordered a penalty area and you did not have any fringe, and it was just straight green all the way until the penalty area. That'd be the only thing I could think of where you'd have that scenario come up.
Kyle, this is Bill. Just a quick question. Is the fringe considered to be part of the green or the general area?
The fringe is general area.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yep.
Not the green.
Tom, did you have a question earlier
No, I
or a
was
comment?
just thinking back to Mark's, the first cut is thick, it's dense, and it's overhanging the green from the fringe onto the green, but it's still not on the green. It has to be touching the green.
So it has to be touching.
Yeah, it's lying in the general area.
Mhm.
We're touching both areas,
Then it'll be on the
even
green.
though the majority of the ball was outside, it would be considered as touching the specific area by the rule.
Mm.
Well, here, the one we had come up
Is that
I'm still.
No, I don't think that's right because it says here that it says lies on or in anything and is inside the edge of the putting green. So if I'm on our bridge over the putting green, as long as where the ball is over the green, it's on the green.
Right, but we're saying if it's in the general area, it's cut long, it's still lying in the general area, the ball's just overhanging the perimeter of the green, it's not touching the green. It's not lying on, not
Is that what
touching
you're
the green.
asking?
well, this is a different example. Yeah, this is another example. It's the fringe is this is the green. It's just like overhanging.
Yeah, the fringe is dense and the ball doesn't touch the green at all, but
If the ball is right, if the ball is right here, then it's on the green.
But even though it's not touching the green?
Correct.
Okay.
Right?
This one came up-
That's how I read it.
This one came up. on
Here, it
the
doesn't
first
say that it needs to
rule.
touch the sand. It just says that it's inside. It lies on or anything. It is
But it's
inside
not
the
lying
edge
on-
of the putting green.
It's not lying on the putting green, right?
Now take.
Hey, Carl, what are you guys talking about?
I don't know.
Take a green that's a complete circle.
We're gonna remove. Yeah, we're gonna get away from this whole bridge discussion. It's
Well, here, if it's over water,
Yeah.
water goes up and down. The penalty area goes up and
uh huh.
down. Take a green that's a complete circle. And around it, you've got a first cut, which is a complete circle. And then after that, you've got regular grass.
Right.
The person mowing the green that morning doesn't, in one area, bring it all the way out to the line. So there's one little area where there's a 1-day cut that wasn't made. The ball is on that area. That came up on the first hole of the championship match of the Michigan Amateur.
Okay. So what did we?
Well, Mick decided that it was not on the green.
Right. Okay. Gotcha.
And then he DQ'd.
Well, no, I would have, I mean, I was gonna, and I did defer to him, but no, I would have thought, you start, what was the architect's intent? The circle.
Right.
What's the committee's intent?
This was
A circle. Are we gonna let
This
the
last year.
person that ran the mower that morning decide what the green is?
Right. Uh huh.
It's just the condition of circumstance.
Yeah. So we were talking. Was that a couple of years ago at the Michigan Am?
No, this was 5 years ago.
Yeah. So it was a few years ago at the Michigan Am, and Jim's example, for those of you that might not have heard it, was that basically the mower that morning didn't mow properly.
Didn't bring it all the way out to the first cut.
Didn't take it all the way out, and that part of the green that he or she didn't mow properly, we deemed to be not part of the putting green. But there was some discussion here as that really probably should have been part of the putting green. But yeah, so all right, we're gonna move on. No more bridge comments. We'll talk about Office Marks Bridge after we're done here. So on the putting green, the ball may be lifted and cleaned. Okay, so whenever we want, but it does need to be marked before it's lifted, and the ball must be replaced on its original spot. Okay, improvements on the putting green. During a round and while play is stopped, a player may take these two actions on the putting green, no matter whether the ball is on or off the putting green. So on the putting green, the removal of sand and loose soil is okay, but not elsewhere on the course. These are not loose impediments. That was a change. So before that, they were kind of grouped under that loose impediments definition. Now not the case. They can also repair damage on the putting green without penalty. However, there are a few things that we want to make sure that it's done in a reasonable time, and that they also need to use their hand, foot, or other part of their body or a normal ball market repair tool to do that. And then in thinking of damage a little bit more in depth too, it needs to be not normal maintenance practices like aeration holes or things like that. We can't fix those, even though that's not the green. A normal green surface that is not damage, and nor would be wear marks or bad grass growth because of bad weather conditions. That's not damage as the rules see it here. In those cases where you have around the collars of the green, typically, we would mark those areas as ground under repair and give the players relief from that, but that's not something that they could repair because that is not considered damage. And then if the player does improve the putting green by taking actions that exceed what is reasonable, then they're going to get the general penalty for that improvement. And then damage on the green means any damage caused by a person or outside influence. So this could be, as we know now, spike marks,
That
obviously.
changed, right?
Yeah, so
Supposedly
spike marks
changed.
was changed in 2019, and scrapes or indentations. So if you were playing in the group after Sergio got pissed off at the greens and slashed his putter into the green, you can now fix that damage. Whereas before, that wasn't something that you could fix if it was in your line. But now you're able to fix it. As before, old hole plugs, we can fix those. Animal tracks or hoof indentations, so no longer do we need a local rule to fix these. Those are allowed. Embedded objects, so if an acorn or stone was embedded or mowed over into the green, we can pry that thing out and then fix it up. No problem anymore. And then just like I talked about before, we're not talking about normal maintenance practices, aeration holes, verticuts, things of that nature. Those cannot be fixed.
Hail is an add-on in the clarification.
Hail?
Hail,
Yeah.
you can repair it.
Okay.
I saw that earlier.
So if the hail was stuck in the green,
Or damage to green.
damage the green. Yep. Okay.
Impact.
That's a good point.
Kyle, is that hail in the clarification?
Yeah. Yes, Dan. Hail is in the clarifications.
Thank you.
Yep. Hopefully we don't have any events where we have hail this year, but being Michigan, you never know. We had a question about a cup and if it's damaged. So when we're talking about the cups, we can now repair those. Whether it was done by accident or on purpose, but we have kind of one kind of it's not a rule per se, but good practice is that if a ball, let's say, hits a cup and damages it so much that it's really difficult to fix, then in that case we want to get the committee involved, and the committee would want to get the superintendent involved to help fix that. And if the case that it can't be fixed, then we would have a new hole cut. But if it's just basic, damage caused by someone putting their hands in, grabbing the ball out of the hole, now that you can keep the flag in, or they jag the edge of the flag into the edge of the cup, we can fix that. But if it's really, really bad, we want to get the committee involved or the superintendent involved to get that fixed. The only other thing I'll say about the cups is that, or the hole cups or whatever you want to call them, is that if you are playing a course where it's normal that they don't change the holes frequently, just natural wear of the cup is not something you can fix. So there's a lot of courses that will cut holes 2 times a week or 3 times a week. If on that last day before they recut them and it's a little ragged, that's not necessarily something you can fix, only because they haven't recut the holes.
Just don't play that.
Sometimes you don't have any choice. All right. When a ball or ball marker moves in the putting green, there's 2 specific balls for a ball and ball marker that moves in the putting green. If it's accidentally, there's no penalty. Okay, and then the player's going to replace the ball in its original spot or put the ball marker on the original spot and play on. However, an exception here, if the ball must be played as it lies when the ball begins to move. So if our ball is moving and we make a stroke, then in that case, we're going to play the ball from where it comes to rest. If the player or opponent deliberately lifts the player's ball or ball marker on the putting green, then we have to see Rule 9.4, 9.5 to find out if there's a penalty or not. And that was that I think that scenario we had last week, we talked about, maybe it was 2 weeks ago, where someone lifted up Patty's ball marker or whatever. We talked about that. Yep. All right. So
Quick question.
yeah.
If the person stopped partway in their swing because they saw the ball was starting to move, so they didn't actually make the stroke, could the ball be put back?
So it's gonna just depend on why that ball moved.
Like if the wind blew it.
Yeah. So if the wind blew it, then we would just keep it where it ended up.
Okay.
But if we think that it was moved because the player caused it to move, then yeah, we would put it back in that scenario.
Hey, Kyle, I have a question.
Hold on one second, Robert. So Tom.
Previously marked. That means it had a position on the green, and you replace the ball. If the ball moved after that point, even if it was wind and water, it goes back because it had position, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So we talk about that exception where in this you guys can hear the question that what the comment was, well, if the ball was marked and then it was lifted and then replaced and then that ball moved because of wind or natural forces, then we would move the ball back to where it was.
Yeah, whether it's during the backstroke or anything else.
Right. Correct.
In her case, the club head is moving back, that's okay. But if the golfer had started the club head forward, then they made a stroke.
Well,
movement with intent to hit the ball.
Right, but I think.
No, but then you can check your swing.
Yeah. So in that case, you would be able to stop your swing or short. But Robert, what was your question? Sorry.
Well, I didn't hear the background discussion, but my understanding is that once you mark your ball, you own the spot.
Yes.
So if before I mark my ball, the ball rolls away for whatever reason, then I have to play it from its new location. But if I had marked the ball and then that ball moves, I can move it back to where it was marked originally. I thought that was the way.
So you're half right there. It needs to be marked and lifted.
Okay.
So and I guess this is a good thing to go over too, is that when we put a ball marker down, that ball is still in play until we lift.
Yes.
So if in that same thought there, if we mark the ball but then don't lift it and the wind blows it, then we're going to play it from where it comes to rest.
Okay, so my specific question is, I mark the ball, pick it up, so it's already marked.
Mm-hmm.
If I come back, put it on the spot, and before I could putt, the wind blows it away, do I still own that spot, or do I go to?
Yep.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
So in that case, you own that spot, and then you would put
Okay.
it back where it was.
All right, thanks. That's what I thought.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Kyle, just to reiterate, I think we talked about it 2 or 3 weeks ago, and clarification with the USGA that if another player marks your ball by accident, picks it up, identifies, and says it's not his or hers, you own that spot too, even if they put it back down, remove the ball mark, and 20 seconds later the ball starts rolling down the front of the green, you still own the spot.
Okay. Yep. So even if you, the player, don't do it, it's just if your ball was marked, lifted, and then replaced.
Yeah, doesn't the rule say if the ball has been lifted, marked and lifted?
Right. Right. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, Kyle,
Yep.
13.1D, the exception.
13.1D, the exception. Okay. Page 176. Am I looking at the right page? Okay. So it talks about ball must be played as it lies when the ball begins to move during the backswing. During the backswing or stroke, and stroke is made. So yeah, so I think that's the last part is that and that applies when the stroke is made. If we don't have a stroke made, then we have our other options. But if the stroke is made, then we're going to, well, in this case, I believe we'll have a penalty, but we're going to play it as it lies as well. All right. All right, so this is what we talked about. If it was lifted and replaced, we're just going to put it back. And again, this rule change came up because of a situation that happened to Billy Horschel at the Masters in 2015, I think it was, where he hit his shot up on the green on 15 there, and he marked his ball, picked it up, put it back down, and then walked to the other side of the hole to look at his putt. And then the gust of wind came up, blew his ball back in the water in the yellow penalty area. And under the old rules, he had to go back, take relief from the yellow penalty area, go on the other side, hit back on the green. Is he a Patrick Reed type?
He's worse.
Oh, really? All right. Apparently, Office Mark says Billy Horschel rivals Patrick Reed, so I'll have to do my research.
Not really with the rules necessarily.
Yeah. Oh, Mark says not with the rules, but he also went to Florida, and Mark's a South Carolina grad, so that might have something to do with it too.
So Kyle, this is Phil. So it's pretty clear under the exception. If you've marked your ball, then you own that spot. You can replace the ball even if the wind moved it. You have to move it back to where you marked it. But if your ball has not been placed, then you own the new spot wherever the wind takes it. That's why I hear on TV quite often they'll say if that player is smart, he'll get up there and mark that ball as quickly as possible.
Yep, mark it and lift it. Yep.
Yeah, and lift the chest.
Right, and I always tell people too that if it's a windy day out, or if you're on a downslope, maybe you don't mark it and you just leave it there because the wind might. I think someone made a comment that if the wind blows it in the hole, then that last shot was good, and
that's right.
You go to the next tee. So it can work. The rules can actually help you sometimes too. It doesn't happen a lot, but they can actually help you sometimes.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yep.
I'm going to have to check off. I really enjoyed the session. I enjoyed listening to all the guys' comments again. I'll be with you from now on as much as I can. But I've got a pre-existing appointment I've got to get to. So thank you very much.
All right. Sounds great, Phil. Appreciate you joining us.
Yeah. Do I just hit the leave meeting button? Is that what I do?
Yep.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks.
See ya.
All right.
Well, who was that?
He I'll tell you later. We're always looking for new people, and he's a good guy to have, that's for sure. Okay, but we can't have any deliberate testing of the greens. So Mark said he used to cheat in high school all the time. Now he knows the rules. I had a teammate that did this too. That they would feel the green to get the grain, and obviously you can't do that. But you can you cannot deliberately take any of these actions. Rub the surface, roll a ball, with the exception of testing greens. When between two holes, a player may rub the surface or roll a ball on the putting green of the hole just completed, or on any practice green. Yeah, Jim.
One of these USGA practice exams, palm down next to the ball to see if the green was wet. That's okay. The only two things you can't do are rub the surface or roll a ball. The full thing.
Yeah, I can't. I don't know. I mean, if that was on the quiz and just placing your hand on there, I mean, I guess, yeah. If that's what.
Just those two things are what count as testing the green.
Yeah, I guess you'd have that fine line of what's rubbing and what's touching, but yeah. Yeah.
So is this the rule that now allows you to stand on your line for aim point or touch your line because it's not prohibited?
So I don't think that's I don't think that's technically this rule. But
I couldn't find any other place where it
could be. I could be. It might be though. Let me find out on that. But it could be this. It could be this part or this rule. But let me find out on that. Is it? I mean, you have that same situation where you can basically you can touch your line of putt, whereas before you'd have to like make sure to hover your putter over that spot. So let me find out if this is the exact rules reference for that, and get back to you.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
Reading this about rubbing the surface.
Yes.
What if somebody's rubbing the surface via cleaning their ball and taking the ball and cleaning it by rubbing the surface of the green?
Yeah, I think that would be okay. So there's no problem with that. But that might be so we'll just use this as an example. The player has a wet towel in one hand and a dirty ball in the other, and instead of using the towel, they rub on the ball in the green. In that scenario, you might ask the player, "Hey, why did you what were you doing there? Why'd you use the green as opposed to your towel?" And try to figure out exactly what they were trying to do. But if they were just if they weren't trying to deliberately test the surface of the green, and they were just cleaning their ball, that's fine.
Hey, Kyle, in the interpretations, it's 13.1e/1, actions that are allowed. It says a player rubs a ball on the putting green to clean off mud.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But if, it's up to the official again, right? If there doesn't appear to be any reason to be rubbing the ball.
Right, sure.
Except to test the green, then it's going to be a penalty.
Right.
Where's that again?
13.1e/1.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's our allotted time for this week. So next week we're going to finish up 13 really quick and then get into 14. 14 definitely the most used rule that we have, for sure. But that'll be a good one. So we'll see everyone next week. Thanks for everyone that attended, and have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Kyle.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Kyle, this is Joe.